Hi everyone, welcome to My Weight Live. On this special Ask the Expert episode, we are talking about common weight loss questions with Dr. Wharton, a true expert and leader in the obesity field. Before we get started, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and let us know if it's your first time joining us. Dr. Wharton, thank you so much for being here with us.
Absolutely, it's great to be here again.
The first question I have for you is one we hear all the time on our Facebook page, and it's about what to do when we're working really hard, we feel like we're doing everything right, and we're just not seeing results. What would you want someone who's experiencing this to know?
Well, I actually think that that's a lot of people. A lot of people are working really hard, and they're doing all the things that they can do within their capacity. They have busy lives, they have family members, they have jobs. So everyone should be really proud of anything that they're doing to try to make their overall health better. And if they think that they're not getting to where they need to be or want to be, then they need to analyze maybe where did you think you could be? What were you looking for? If you're looking to be at the weight that you were before you got married, then we may be in a challenging situation. If you're looking to be a healthy 45-year-old or 35-year-old and a healthier person, then we've got something that we can work with.
The next most common question we get is about plateaus. So what to do when we've been working really hard, things have been going well, and then the weight loss stops. What do you wish people knew about plateaus?
Understanding and dealing with a plateau can be challenging, but oftentimes it's more of an emotional challenge than it is an actual physiological challenge. The body is designed to stop at a certain point, and it says, hey, this is good. I like this weight that I'm currently at. With all the efforts that you're putting in place, this is where we are going to land. And that's probably a good landing spot. If a person absolutely wants more, needs more, then they may have to do something different or something that is unattainable different. A surgical option, a newer medication that we haven't invented yet. So getting off of the plateau may be above and beyond what the person can actually do at this time. So what I'd like to do is to have people understand that their plateau may be where God, whoever she is telling their body that this is where it's going to land, and if they're healthy and they're doing well, this is a good spot for them.
So this question of not really having a lot of control over where our weight loss journey ends really introduces this concept of best weight. Tell us what best weight is and how you help your patients understand that concept.
And I love the concepts of best weight, and I even push it a little further. I say best person. So I don't know where the weight is going to go, but I can tell them that they're trying to be the best person they can possibly be. A person who is loved and knows they're loved and is cared for and does good for their family, for their community, and tries to keep their health as good as it can possibly be. And that may be a certain weight, but it's always going to be certainly that their blood sugars are a little bit better than they were previously, or that their ability to be active and move is better than it was previously, and their ability to not blame themselves when they don't move or everything isn't perfect, but they're able to get back onto the horse and to try again. So I think those are the things that a best person can possibly be.
Oh, I love best person instead of best weight, because at the end of the day, we are not the number on the scale. We are the life we're living and the people that we love and who love us back.
Exactly.
We are going to pause here and do our trivia question. Folks, if you answer this question, you will get our helpful guide to dealing with negative thoughts, specifically ones that can impact our weight management journey. And you will get that guide for free if you answer our trivia question, which is, which fast food chain has the most locations around the world? Is it A, Subway, or B, Chipotle? Which one has the most locations worldwide? Put your best guess in the comments and you will get that awesome guide delivered to your Facebook Messenger inbox. And folks, if you can think of any friends or family members who might find this show helpful, please tag them in the comments so they can tune in too. Dr. Wharton, a lot of women want to know about hormonal or menopause-related weight gain, particularly around the midsection. Why does this happen and what can we do about it?
This is a great topic because what it does is it introduces a little bit of the science that we don't know about. So we don't really understand what is going on and why the weight becomes more central. And it also allows me to talk to people about a little bit about why they think that they got to this elevated weight stage. Their weight is a little higher than they would like it to be, and they say, "Doc, do you think it's my hormones?" I say, "Yes." "Do you think it's because I'm a female?" "Yes." "Do you think it's because of my genetics?" "Yes." "Do you think it's because of the medications that I've taken?" "Yes." Every answer is always yes. There's multiple aspects to why the weight goes up, and some of the research has shown us that within that time frame, the age time frame from age 45 to age 60, there were some women that went through menopause and they looked at the weight gain, and other women didn't go through menopause and they still got weight gain. So was it a matter of time? The timing and the number of years and this time in their life? Was it an age thing? Nothing to do with the hormonal changes? What is it? We don't really know, but we know that being good to yourself during that time is important. Trying to be more active if you can, so keep yourself mobile and keep yourself limber, and doing all the, because what they did show as well in that study is that anybody who engaged actively in a weight management program or a healthy program was able to mitigate that weight gain during that time frame, regardless of whether you were going through menopause or you weren't. You mitigated weight gain. You didn't go down necessarily, but you stopped it from going up. And so being engaged in knowing your body, trying to be as healthy as you possibly can, will help those menopausal years to be as good as they can possibly be.
So can strength training be something that can help women avoid that weight gain as we get older?
I believe that it can. I believe that strength training is going to give you more muscle mass. So the reason why men tend to lose weight faster than women do is because they have more of the skeletal muscle mass. And so if we can build up that muscle mass, your metabolic rate is going to be a little bit higher, things will be a little bit more positive. But above and beyond the physiology of just building that muscle mass, I think it's about the fact that the person's going to the gym and engaging in this activity and thinking about their health every time they actually do it. Their whole persona is trying to be a healthier person. May that be a resistance exercise in a specific way or one that incorporates both a cardio and a resistance exercise. So just the engagement is a really important aspect. And to me, it doesn't matter which one they end up doing. I try to get them to do more. I talk more about the resistance training, about the muscle building, because it's harder for people to do. They don't think about it as much. They think about sweating and the cardio as being as burning as the burning fat. So just pushing them into the resistance training and the muscle building will at least make it maybe 20-30% of their overall activity regimen. Climbing upstairs, doing resistance bands, that's muscle training. So I get people to do that as much as I possibly can.
So you said something interesting earlier. You said that women who were engaged in some kind of weight management program were less likely to gain weight as they went through kind of those menopausal years. Talk about the benefits of not gaining weight. I think sometimes we're so focused on losing weight, we ignore the fact that just not gaining weight is also a win.
The natural tendency of anyone as they get older is that their metabolic rate is going to drop. Sometimes it drops off more rapidly after a certain age, about age 60. But in general, we're seeing it go down slowly every single year. So we're going to gain weight. We're supposed to gain weight. The idea is that the older person in the village was going to be the last person to get food. So they had to be a really efficient person. The baby has to be an inefficient person. They're going to be fed all the time. But efficiency needs to go up when you're 70 and 80 years old because you're not going to get food all that easily. So your weight is going to naturally go up. So if we can mitigate that weight gain as we get older by being active, by being more limber, by doing things that Jane Fonda does. Jane Fonda's getting older and she talks now about mobility and movement, not just the Jane Fonda big programs, but and I think that all that is needed and necessary. Be the healthiest person you can be into your older years and mitigating some of that weight gain. And what we see is that older patients do better with weight management than younger patients do. They're more focused, they're more understanding of their own bodies, and they do a better job. So that's an excellent thing to know.
So fatigue is another thing that people really struggle with. What would you want someone to know who's just saying, I feel tired all the time, I just don't have the energy to make the lifestyle changes I want to make?
And one of the number one searches on the internet is, why am I so tired? So everybody's tired, and the reason why people are tired a lot of times is not because of their extra weight, if they are carrying this extra weight. It's oftentimes because of the society things, such as their work habits, their sleeping habits, their eating habits, eating late at night, and their emotional stressors. So we can't just attach it to the person's weight and that the fact that if they're tired, they're not able to actually exercise. Everybody's tired on a regular basis. Anything extra that a person can do, which means that let's try to get better sleeping habits. Let's try to do the best that we can to engage in activity. That doesn't mean going to the gym. I have to have so much energy that I have to get up and do a 1 hour session at the gym. I have to be rested enough that when I get up, I can move around, I can get in my steps, I can walk up the stairs, I can be engaged, I can be thinking about proper food habits that I should be eating. So it doesn't always have to be an intense gym practice. It just has to be enough energy that you're a good person, you're good to yourself, and your brain is actually thinking properly. So let's always continue to work on that.
So you said eating late at night can actually disrupt our sleep. Is that something you work with your patients to try to avoid?
I always try to help patients with evening eating. And the evening eating is about the emotional eating. And so so eating during the day doesn't have as much emotion that is connected to it. So if you could be more of a robotic type of manner where you're eating during the day on a regular basis and decreasing that emotional eating in the evening, which some people miss, they actually want it. but let's replace it with some other type of emotional aspect in the evening. So reading a book, going to take a walk, doing a Pilates or a yoga, doing something that engages your brain and your body, because if you're taking away that fun evening emotional eating, what is it replaced by? So cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm cognizant that my behavior in the evening is not great, and so the therapy is to replace it with something else that we can actually do. And so because we know that evening eating causes lots of challenges, not even just the physiologic challenges, but the emotional challenges and the guilt and the shame. And so working on it starts in the morning, it starts at noontime, it starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then we can get better for the evening time frame.
A lot of people tell us that they could be successful if they just had more willpower. I'm sure you hear that a lot. What do you want people to know about willpower?
I think it's true. People could be more successful if they had more willpower, but they don't, because God gave us a certain amount of exhaustible willpower, and we're using a lot of that willpower for a lot of other things, like getting our kids to school on time and making sure that we're doing all the other things in life in an appropriate fashion. We've got to will ourselves to do that. We've got to use our executive functioning to do it. So willpower comes from the executive lobe, and that executive lobe gets exhausted, and we have to do a lot of things on a daily basis to keep our lives functioning and our families happy, and that's important.
So I'm reminded as you're saying that we've heard a lot of obesity experts talk about how many of the choices we make about food are really below our level of conscious control. We don't really get to choose a lot of those things. Talk a little bit about how our brain controls how and why we eat.
Our brain has a lot of functioning to make sure that we do not have control over some very specific things. These things are for our survival as a species. So those two things are eating and sex. So we have to reproduce, so you have no option but to have attraction and to be able and to hunt and to do those type of things for the species. If you're a lion, or if you're a salamander, or if you are a human being, that part of reproduction has to be there beyond our control. The other thing that has to be there is eating. You have to be able to eat as much as possible, getting on as much fat as possible, to be able to deal with the famine. So if that was just due to our executive control, we would be in trouble. So as we look at this, at those two main things that we have to that are absolutely needed, if we do have some control over them during the day. Our executive lobe says, don't think about sex all the time. I'm at work. I'm doing this. I'm doing that, and maybe to deal with the eating behaviors on a more appropriate level. But again, that exhaustive part of the lobe, that executive lobe, gets tired after a certain point in the evening. And that's where eating behaviors happen. That's when sexual activity tends to happen. And that's the way our body and our brain was designed so that we could all be here on this planet. So we have to take lessons from that and understand it. And if we want to tweak it a little bit, we can do some of the things that we are now doing within the weight management field to try to tweak it, but we'll never replace it. It's there for good and for good reason.
So it sounds like that's another reason to have compassion for ourselves. If at the end of the day we find ourselves making choices maybe we're not thrilled with, we've worn out that willpower muscle and it is what it is. And that's probably a time when we want to use CBT as a way to kind of counterbalance some of that drive to food.
And that's exactly right. So the executive lobe is that CBT portion. So you wake up the frontal lobe and say, I'm bad in the evening at this certain thing. So therefore, if I can remind myself to try to be as good as possible, that will be helpful. It can be exhaustive at times, the first few times, but as we get better and better and better at it, training our brain to wake up during the times that things are bad for us, then our vulnerable times, then things can end up getting better and better and better.
And it's something we practice, right? We're not going to be great at it at the beginning, but we're going to develop more skills as we go along.
And that's the exciting thing about being a human being, because we have the frontal lobe, and that control allows us to have a society and a lack of chaos and a lack of just being dealing with those hedonistic parts of our brain. But they're still there, and they're still come out, and they need to, because we need to survive, but we do have some control over them from time to time.
So we interviewed one of your patients several years ago, and she told us that you changed her life when you told her you wanted her to stop focusing on losing weight and instead focus on her health. So tell us why that's such an important mindset shift.
If the person cannot focus on weight, it's almost like a runner. If the runner wants to get really fast, sometimes if they just focus on, I got to get to the finish line faster, and the coach says, whoa, we got to slow down. We got to focus on your arm movement. We've got to focus on your breathing. And they're like, but I just want to get to the finish line fast. So focus on all these other things, and you will get to the finish line faster. So what we want to work on in the weight management field is focusing on the person, not just the weight. And so she was going to focus on her health, but she was also going to focus on not just her physical health, like what was her blood sugar and what was her blood pressure, but what was her mental health doing? What job did she have? What was her relationship with her family members and her coworkers? Did they drive her to have an emotional response where she came home at night and felt bad about herself, therefore was overeating? So the person is the important part first, and then the weight just goes in the right direction because they're taking care of themselves as a person. They're loved, they're cared for, they're compassionate to themselves, and things get better.
Well, I think as you're speaking about that, I'm realizing sometimes that really focus on the number on the scale, something we don't have a lot of control over, isn't very good for our mental health. So almost taking the pressure off of that improves our mental health, probably lowers stress, and allows us to be healthier and probably, our way to settle out at a healthier place.
I tell many people not to get on the scale. If the scale causes stress, then don't get on the scale. Do all those other things that are helpful for you as a person, which is the relationships, the emotional aspects, the cognitive behavioral therapy, the inner thoughts, the inner voices. Do all of those things and don't worry about the scale. And then soon enough, you'll see that things are moving in the right direction because your pants are fitting better, your clothes are fitting better. And if you ever do get on a scale at that time, then fine. It shouldn't cause you stress, hopefully at that time. But if it ever does, don't ever get on it. Just take care of yourself as a person, and you'll see positive outcomes from it.
So if someone is watching at home saying, okay, I'm ready to focus on my health, where would you suggest they start?
And so I think the first focus on a person's health should be looking at where am I going and what do I want to actually do? Not just let me go to the doctor and doctor, give me an entire panel so that I can know that my health is all right and all my blood work is fine and everything else. No, that's not where we want to go. You want to go with the fact that I'm now in a position where I want to overall be a healthier person. What does that healthier person mean? And some of it is in blood work. Some of it is in some diagnostic tests. Some of it is in the cognitive behavioral aspects, in the psychological aspects. Where's my psychological health? Why do I want to be healthy? Who am I doing it for? I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it for my loved ones. I'm doing it for my society because I want to keep producing good stuff for my city, for my work, for a long period of time. The overall thought process of being healthier is not just one diagnostic test, but it's an overall approach that a person needs to actually look at.
In case you're just joining us, we're here with Dr. Sean Wharton doing an Ask the Expert session all about weight management. And we're giving away our awesome guide to dealing with negative thoughts if you answer our trivia question, which is, which fast food chain has the most locations around the world? Is it A, Subway, or B, Chipotle? Put your best guess in the comments and you will get that guide delivered to your Facebook Messenger inbox. Folks, we do this show every month and we want to make sure you never miss an episode. Text the word WATCH to 844-966-1957 and we'll send a short text message to you when we go live each month. All right, Dr. Wharton, let's talk about BMI. So many people have questions about it. Is it a useful measure and what are the challenges with it?
BMI is one of my favorite topics because it's brought out so much, so many questions and so many ideas that we are now able to talk about so many different things. So I'd like to start at the beginning. There was a physiologist in the 1850s looking at the average man. He just wanted to figure out the volume of a person. Is it a cylinder volume, etc.? So they came up with a mathematical equation. This was in Belgium. So, of course, the average man was a white European male. So by the time Ansel Keys got a hold of this in 1972, he established BMI with the criteria for health based on a white male. So BMI of 27 put somebody into an overweight category. A BMI of 24 put them into the healthy weight category based on risk factors. And those are still relatively true if you're a white European male. If you're a woman, it's not true. If you're a black woman, if you're a Hispanic woman, if you're a South Asian person, if you're Asian, then all those parameters do not dictate your health or don't give you an accurate assessment of your own health. So I don't think we need to throw away the BMI as a measurement, but I do think we need to understand that the cutoffs were not always made for everybody in the world. So I look at things such as if you're a black woman with a BMI 32, which is supposed to be in the obesity class 1 category, but if you do not have any blood sugar problems, you don't have any fatty liver, you don't have any medical conditions, you have a BMI of 32, you shouldn't be classified as having obesity. You should be classified as being beautiful. And that's what we need to do. We need to redefine by looking at the person's health risk first of all, and we can do that easily. We're many in the healthcare field. We can do blood work. We can do blood pressures. We can do assessments to determine where the person is. And so, oftentimes in my practice, individual with the patient one-on-one, I don't look at BMI. Overall epidemiology, I may look at BMI, but I may try to make sure that it's looked at from the different ethnic groups and the geographies of the world.
I think when it comes to things like diabetes or high blood pressure, we understand that seeking treatment early, being proactive is important. Is that also true for obesity?
When I look at obesity and the risk factors for continuing to have that elevated weight that leads to medical problems, I think of it in two different ways. So somebody has polygenic obesity and they have two parents that have polygenic obesity. The chances that they will also have it are relatively high. So when that child is 12, 13, 14, and they're already facing these major challenges, that's the time to start treatment for that patient, because we know, we've seen it, we've tried them with exercise, we're going to get them to have a better diet. We know how this story ends. Ends the same way on a regular basis. We just blame and shame them and try to change their genetic structure by doing a phenotypical type of pushing them in the wrong direction. They need treatment. When it comes to adults who don't have that specific history, I think trying the best they can with lifestyle modification, trying the best they can with cognitive behavioral therapy to demonstrate how big is their bucket full of the genetics that are pushing their weight up and they need medical intervention, or do they have an ability to do it through lifestyle modification? Try them both. When the lifestyle modification fails to the degree that the person has tried, then we move on to the medical interventions. And that should be earlier as opposed to later, so that the medical conditions don't end up happening. But we have to have autonomy here. People need to do the best that they possibly can. If they want to start quickly, they can start quickly. If they want to start a little bit later, they can start a little bit later. They're individuals, they have autonomy. We should support them in their strive to be the best person they can be.
So we've had several obesity experts tell us that some people with obesity have a negative inner dialogue happening, and that comes from internalized bias. So tell us, what is internalized bias, and how might someone figure out if that's something they're experiencing?
So understanding internalized bias, what we need to first understand about what bias is. So bias usually is a negative word. You have a negative feeling about a certain thing, and that could be about you, about yourself. Where does that negative bias come from? So bias can also be looked at as prejudice. And then that negative bias, we're not born with it. It comes from our external cues. And those external cues are stigma. So stigma is an image that we see of somebody living with obesity, shoving food into their mouth or wearing the wrong type of shirt. And that reinforces our bias that they've got problems. And if we didn't have that bias before, we now certainly have it, because that stigmatizing picture makes us think that. And that's like a stereotype. And these stereotypical pictures and images are not just exposed to people not living with obesity, it's exposed to everybody. So the person living with obesity themselves sees themselves in a very negative light. They start to believe it, and they start to have an inner dialogue that I'm not good enough, I'm not even worthy of care, I'm not worthy of love, and that is a major challenge. We see it in many other fields, many other areas as well, in racism. The Black Power movement, or the Black is Beautiful movement, wasn't for the other groups. It was for the Black people themselves, because they had such internalized bias that they were bad, that they were wrong, that they had to remind themselves that they are beautiful and they're competent. So once you can deal with your internalized bias, then you can move on. So people living with obesity should frequently have this internalized bias, that they are bad, that they're doing the wrong thing. And we as healthcare professionals should remind them that that's wrong, that they're loved, that they're cared for, that they're good people, that they're bright, that they're the same as the rest of the population, and have been dealt a genetic hand of this elevated weight.
So we have more effective obesity treatments than ever, and yet often when people lose weight, they find that their lives aren't magically better. What advice do you share for someone who feels like losing weight is going to be their ticket to happiness or a better life?
So when people living with obesity actually lose weight, and that weight was causing a medical condition, then actually they will have a better life based on that, the component that we're talking about. So if they had type 2 diabetes and their type 2 diabetes is better, that's a better day. If they had obstructive sleep apnea and they don't have obstructive sleep apnea any longer, their heart is not going to have those major problems, they are in a better state. They're a better person at this stage, a better health-wise. When it comes to all the other things in the person's life, if they were thinking that getting rid of the type 2 diabetes or the obstructive sleep apnea was going to help their relationship with their loved one, with their partner, with their job, or deal with their emotions, it may not, and it shouldn't. That's not what it was necessarily there for. There are things to make their lives better, to reframe the person's life, and that's psychological treatment. So I always let people know that the things that they're looking to get better from a health standpoint, and as an internal medicine doctor, they will get better. I don't debate whether they'll get better when their visceral adiposity goes down. I don't have the answers for the rest of the person's life, but I can direct them towards somewhere. I don't have the answers for my life. So I'm hoping that they find the right answers to make their overall life better also. I'm hopeful for that.
Dr. Wharton, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
And a big thank you to everyone watching at home. We so appreciate you being here and chatting with us in the comments. Before we go, here's the answer to our trivia question. Which fast food chain has the most locations around the world, Subway or Chipotle? The answer is A, Subway. If you didn't get to answer the trivia question, but you'd still like our guide to dealing with negative thoughts, just leave a comment for us and tell us what you thought of the show. We will be back to you with a new episode in a few weeks. Until then, please stay safe and take good care. Good night.